And I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to run that over there. Now let's talk about this first question here. What do you call a service technician's protective head cover? We got 31 questions here. Shop safety, and this is not an exhaustive safety exam. You'll learn some more as you go. Like, when you get out in the shop, we're going to show you how to raise the cars up. How many of you guys have ever raised a car on a lift? Put a car on a lift, so you know how to do that. You use a floor jack and some jack stands, right? How many of you ever got under a car on a creeper without with a floor jack holding it up and no jack stands under it? You ever do that? Anybody ever do that? That's not wise, really, because it can come down on you. Hey, Joe. And Joe's one of the college guys. Have a seat over there, Joe. All right. All safety glasses should meet standards. Excuse me. What do you call that? The first one. Anybody know? Hey, if you guys have already done it, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Let's swap tests with your neighbor. Okay. Swap your tests. Go from, and grade your buddy's test, and we're going to see, how you guys did. Then we're going to go over that. Make sure that you, whenever I make a check mark and put the right answer out there next to it. And that way we're going to, you guys can reevaluate how you did. What do you call it? What's the answer number one?
Bump cap.
Bump cap. What does a bump cap look like? Anybody seen a bump cap? Now, I don't know of any mechanic anywhere that I've ever seen that wears a bump cap. You know what I mean? I just don't know of one. Now, a bump cap looks kind of like a hard hat, but it sits lower on your head. Obviously you can't get up under a car with a hard hat on, because it sticks way up off the top of your head. But a bump cap is basically supposed to keep you from banging your head on stuff and injuring your head. Remember I told you about a guy that banged his head on the engine hoist and had to go get a CAT scan done? All right. Number 2, all safety glasses should meet standards set by who? A, DOT, B, ANSI, C, ASE, or D, SAE. Do you know what any of those things mean? What are any of those acronyms? Or an acronym actually spells a word. So that's a misnomer to call one of these an acronym, because only one of them spells a word. DOT is what? That's right, he got that right. What about ANSI? American National Standards Institute, that's what that is. C is ASE, that's like ASE, Automotive, National Institute for Automotive Service Excellence. Right, so right here, that's, and then you got SAE, what's that stand for? Anybody know? Society of American Engineers, right? Okay, so what's the right answer to number 2? ANSI, that's right, American National Standards Institute. Okay, so when you're washing your hands, the water should be at what temperature? Now, I guess it can be colder than this, but they don't want it to be any hotter than this. Should it be at 98 degrees, 110 degrees, 135 degrees, or 125 degrees? Anybody know? Now, who's going to measure the temperature of the water? You're going to know when it's right, aren't you? You're going to turn the water up and down, up and down, up and down, So basically, you're supposed to have it at 110 degrees. Now, what's your body temperature? If they put a thermometer in your mouth and they're looking for a body temperature that's normal, what is it? Huh? 98.6 is what it's supposed to be. That's the standard thing. Now, Joe, tell you what, don't you do? Watch the shop, and if anybody comes in here that is in this group looking for me, make sure they know where to find me, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, so hearing protection should be worn anytime the noise level exceeds what? Anybody know what that number is? Huh? 90 decibels. How do you know these answers so well, Cade? 90 decibels. So, 90 decibels, if you got a skill saw, if you pull a trigger on a skill saw, it's going to be more than 90 decibels. That's, 90 decibels is pretty restrictive. And I've actually out here behind this rack that's got these rolls of seat covers and all on it, you're going to find some hearing protection. The stuff you put in your ears, the foam thing, little disposable thing. So if you need any of those, there they are. You got me? And if you want hearing protection, it doesn't mean you're a wuss. It just means you don't look at your ears. Whenever I was a lot younger, I probably should have used the hearing protection when I was shooting some of the guns and stuff I was shooting, but you lose a little bit of hearing. You won't get where you can't hear nothing, but you'll get where there's some things you can't hear. I have trouble hearing a labor knock. Whenever somebody's put gas in the car that's the wrong octane or something's wrong, and it goes like, and it's rattling when you're going up the hill. I have trouble picking up that. If it's really loud, I can, but somebody says, my car's labor knocking, and they'll hear it, and I won't. Now, when I check my, I take little pills for blood sugar problem. Whenever my check my blood sugar in the with my little blood sugar machine. My wife has got absolutely phenomenal hearing, and I'll be in the opposite end of the house with the fan going, and she'll be out there in the house, and that little glucose meter will go beep, just real faint, and she'll yell, "You must have just checked your blood sugar." She hears that from the other end of the house. It boggles my mind that she can hear that good. Oh, and I'm taking this tungsten ring, taking it off my hand. If you get that shorted out between two battery terminals, you know what it gets really hot on your finger. Can you imagine what that would feel like? And you can't cut that tungsten with a pair of pliers. They won't even scratch it. So I put it in my coin purse. That way I don't have dangerous jewelry. Or stuff hanging around your neck. You don't need that. You bend over with something hanging around your neck. Now I got something inside my shirt hanging around my neck, but if you got something hanging around your neck out here and it gets hooked up in a fan belt, it kind of pulls you in after it. You ever had something like that happen? And that's good that you have it, because it's not good, because you may not be strong enough to keep yourself out of there. All right, now then, let's go here. Two technicians are discussing the safe use of a wrench. Technician A says a wrench should be pulled towards you. Technician B says a wrench should be pushed away. Who's right about that? Huh? Okay, so but now, let's be honest here. I mean, basically, when you have a choice, basically this question should be prefaced with, when you have a choice, you should always pull the wrench instead of push it. Because if you pull the wrench, of course you need to pay attention to what's in the way too. If you pull the wrench, you got more control when it comes loose all of a sudden. If you push the wrench, you got all your weight pushing you, and you're probably going to plow your hand into something and open it up. Now, have you ever skinned your knuckle a lot or anything like that? You ever do that? Does it bother you when you skin your knuckle? It better not, because you're going to do it in here. You're probably going to have little minor hand wounds and stuff like that. So be careful about that, and also I've got these little black natural gloves out here that you can wear. A lot of your professional technicians in dealerships particularly will wear those gloves nowadays, because they put the gloves on, they do the greasy work on the car, they pop the gloves off, they're ready to drive this car with the white steering wheel cover like these Lincolns and all. They're ready to drive it out of the service bay. They don't have to go to the washroom. If you got your hands all filthy, you got to go to the washroom first and wash your hands. But if you just pop the gloves off and your hands are clean, you can just drive it right on out. See? You don't want greasy handprints on there. I've said this a lot in here, but you can do everything right, just fix everything that was wrong with some little old lady's car. But let's say that you got one greasy thumbprint on her steering wheel and you're worm dirt, she'll never bring her car to you again. That's the only thing they notice is what you didn't do right. You know what I mean? You ever see anybody like that? They don't notice the 98 things you did right. They just notice the one thing you did they didn't like. So make sure that you don't give them anything to complain about. This one guy, when we were doing transmission mechanic, that was working next to me at the Ford place years ago, he had a customer that when he got through putting the transmission back in, there was nothing on the paint, there was nothing inside the car, there was no footprints in the floorboard, everything was perfect. But the guy got under the car and saw his dirty handprints on the cross member where he put it back in, and griped because he didn't clean the cross member. And this is under the car where you couldn't even see it. And some customers are really particular. They're going to look under there and see if you wiped everything down. They want it to look like a brand new car when they're done. One guy come in and he said his drive shaft was rusty. Think about that for a minute. When the car comes out of the factory, most of them got aluminum drive shafts now if they've got a drive shaft. But the drive shafts weren't painted. It's just raw steel, And this guy says, my drive shaft is rusty, and it was on a pickup truck. You can kind of see it under there. He said, I don't like a rusty drive shaft. And so they said, well, they don't paint the drive shaft. It's just like it is what it is, And he said, warranty's not going to pay us to do anything about no rusty drive shaft. And I said, well, I'll do that. I'll take care of his rusty drive shaft. I just heard him talking about it. I said, just let me take it back there. You don't even have to make a ticket on it. So I took it back there and put it up some jack stands, because I was working in flat stalls then. I didn't want to lift because it was too much trouble if you're doing drivability work. Raised it up, put stands on it, ran the wheels with the drive shaft spinning, went up and down the drive shaft with a wire brush. Well, it was spinning under there. It was on a creeper, And then I shut the truck off and I wiped all the dust off of it and blew it out. And then I cranked it back up and I got the wheels rolling again. I got me a can of black paint. Perfect paint job. That thing's spinning and you're just moving real slow. Shiny, pretty, clean. He was happy as a lark. I didn't pay anything to do it, but I enjoyed the heck out of that. It was fun. I got paid by enjoying doing it, And he got a nice, clean, dry. And he was a happy customer too, see. He left. But they were afraid to ask any of the mechanics to do it because they knew there's no way they could pay them for it. You got me? And I just volunteered to do that. You can get people coming and asking for you if you do extra little stuff for them. Okay. Let's see. Exhaust hoses could be used because of one of the exhaust gases can be highly can be in high concentrations, excuse me. Which gas is it? Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, or oxides of nitrogen? Exhaust hoses should be used because one of the exhaust gases is going to be high in concentrations. Which one of them is the bad one? Now what is hydrocarbons? Anybody know what hydrocarbons is? Have you ever, which one of you guys bought gas recently? I'm talking about walked up there, bought some gas. You buy some gas? You bought any gas lately? Everybody drive in here? Who don't drive? All right. You buy any gas lately? Did you smell the gas when you were pumping it in the car? That's hydrocarbons. Have you ever seen black soot coming out the back of a car? That's hydrocarbons is what it is. But basically it looks different. You can see gasoline vapor distorting the image, in front of you. It's just sort of makes things look wavy. Okay, so that's hydrocarbons. But hydrocarbons are there, don't you? How do you know they're there?
You smell them.
Smell them. It ain't good to smell gas, in great quantity, but that's there, so you can kind of protect yourself, turn on a fan, whatever. Okay, what about oxides of nitrogen? We're typically going to have that more when we're driving down the road and everything's running nice and hot, because that happens when the combustion chamber temperature goes over 2,500 degrees. All right, you got carbon dioxide. Now, is that a problem? Have you been told that carbon dioxide is a problem? Now, the people that carbon dioxide won't. Carbon dioxide is what you breathe out. And our cars now, the emission systems are working so good on our cars now that the carbon dioxide that they're breathing out is the same thing we breathe out. The same thing all living animals breathe out is carbon dioxide, which hasn't hurt a doggone thing. And furthermore, if you've been told that, it's causing climate change and all that kind of stuff, think about this. If the atomic weight of nitrogen and oxygen are 14 and 16 respectively or whatever, and the atomic weight of carbon dioxide is 44, then what's carbon dioxide going to do? It's going to hug the ground and feed the grass and the trees, right? Because they like it. The grass and the trees like that. So if we want to go green, we need to make more carbon dioxide, not less. Right? You got that? Does that make scientific sense? Anyway, carbon dioxide is not the answer to this question. Carbon monoxide is. All right, now, how do we get carbon monoxide? Gasoline is what? Hydrocarbons, right? Okay, so what happens when something burns? When something's burning, what's actually going on at the molecular level? Anybody know? Oxygen is uniting with it. How many of you guys have ever used a torch and burned a piece of metal off? Like you take a torch, you get it red hot, right? And then you pull the trigger. What do you do when you pull that trigger? What's happening when you pull the trigger on that torch?
Like a
pure stream of oxygen. And that oxygen oxidizes that metal. You're basically rusting it off of there. Because rust is iron oxide, right? Well, hydrocarbons, when it unites with oxygen, it turns in, if it gets enough oxygen, it winds up being carbon dioxide. You got two molecules of oxygen, one molecule of hydrocarbon, you get carbon dioxide, and there's nothing wrong with that, it's just fine. If, however, the mixture is a little too rich, and you've got one molecule of carbon and one molecule of oxygen, you've got carbon monoxide, which is poison. I could fill this room up with it. You couldn't smell it, you couldn't see it, but we would all die if it was in enough of a concentration. That's what you got to pay attention for, is carbon monoxide. Have you heard of these carbon monoxide warning indicators? It's sort of like a smoke alarm that you put in your house. Like if somebody's using a heater that's actually got the mixture wrong and it's producing a lot of carbon monoxide, you can go to sleep and never wake up. You got me?
Don't it like put you to sleep slowly?
Yeah, you'll go to sleep. And you just won't wake up. Basically, that's how that works. So, but anyway, the carbon monoxide is a killer. Now, I will say, because of the fact that our system is working as good as it is, I mean, our emission systems and all, you don't hardly ever have that trouble anymore. I always like to tell that story about that guy. They used to back his, how many of you guys have worked in the chicken house industry? Where you got chickens, where you got lots of chickens? You know what I'm talking about? If a lot of those chickens die, basically the guy that's growing the chickens gets an insurance payoff, right? Well, this guy used to back his 78 Ford pickup into this chicken house, and he'd leave the engine running and kill a bunch of chickens. And then he would pick up the chickens and say he lost a bunch of chickens, and he'd get a check from somebody. I don't know what kind of subsidy that was, but the long and short of it was he bought a 2003 Ford pickup, and he tried that with that, and it wouldn't kill any of the chickens. He burned out a tank of gas, and the chickens were all running around happy as a lark. You know, they were closed up in chicken house. So long and short, the truck wasn't hurting. You know, it's not poisoning us like it used to. But if the air fuel mixture's off and things aren't working right, you can have a problem with that. So just be careful about that. I spent a long time on that question, but it's important. The process of combustion occurring without an open flame is called what? Spontaneous combustion. And when does that happen? Why are we talking about that in a shop? Where can it happen in the shop? Spontaneous combustion. Well, what about when you got a bunch of oily shop rags piled up in a pile and a chemical? Have you ever, how many of you guys work around a farm? You've been around a farm? Have you ever been around a place where it wasn't cold, but you had hay that was put up when it was green, and you can actually feel how hot it is? It gets hot. It's going through a heat. Is basically what it does. Now this oil will do that in these rags, and it can get hot enough where it can burst a flame. Eddie down at Diesel, they had a bunch of greasy, dirty, oily rags piled up, and they caught fire down there, just all by themselves. That's what spontaneous not human combustion. That's probably an urban myth or urban legend. But the long and short of it is, piling them greasy shop rags up can do that. And if you've ever got any shop rags out here in the shop that are completely soaked with oil, you know, the people bring the shop rags every week and they swap them out for us. But if that guy if there's any that are completely soaked with oil in and amongst what we got, he'll throw them in the trash anyway. So if they're completely soaked with oil, throw them in the trash, usually by themselves. You don't want a pile of them in the trash can with oil on them, you know, and then try to keep them spread out so they won't do this. So, when using a fire extinguisher, what word can be used to remember what to do? And this is basic. These are acronyms here. That's number 8. What you gonna remember? Yeah. What is it? Yeah. So what does that stand for? And compress. You know, you're gonna point it and pull the trigger. Now we did set a car on fire a couple of semesters ago in here. I mean, it was kind of unexpected, but we had to use a fire extinguisher to put it out. That was using a torch, you know, under there. But anyway, that's something you know how to use a fire extinguisher. You pull the pin and point it and shoot it, right? And this acrid smoke makes you go, you know, and it gets all over everything. All right, so what type of fire extinguisher is usable for most types of fire? What about a dry chemical? Dry chemical is this white dust that comes out of the fire extinguisher right here. Number 10, which item is usually not included in a first aid kit? You don't usually find a fire blanket in a first aid kit, do you? Technician A says the shoes with comfortable insoles are more comfortable when standing for long periods of time. That should be sort of a no-brainer, shouldn't it? Technician B says steel-toe boots are essential to protecting your feet from injury. Which technician is correct? That's both of them. I have worn steel-toe boots, and I have worn boots that were not steel-toed. You're not required to have steel-toe boots in here. Although if you do, sometimes you may be happy you did if you drop something heavy on your foot. Okay. Which type of glove is damaged by contact with petroleum products or solvents? Which one is damaged? Number 12. That's latex. Those white latex gloves, if you get oil and stuff on them, it typically makes them all flabby and soft, and they get to where they just won't stay on your hand anymore. What type of gloves provide thermal protection? That's number 13. That's basically, hey, that's mechanics gloves. You know, the ones that you've seen that say mechanics, you know, with spelled with an X on the back. Those are, but you need to read the label. I mean, you need to read the tag that comes on the gloves, because some of them will tell you that thermal protection is not anything. Hey, Shug, put that other on Zach's truck where he's working, so I won't forget where it's at. Yeah. All right, let's see. How might a ring be a safety hazard? You saw me take mine off a minute ago. How you figure on that? What's wrong with it? C. It could get caught on a moving part, or it could become a path for an electrical circuit. So that's going to be both A and B. A typical lawnmower should be used with hearing protection. Right? It should, really. How many of us use hearing protection when we're riding our lawnmower? You do that? You afraid they're going to think you're a wussy boy if you put on muffs? I actually put on some noise-canceling earphones to hear my talk show when I'm doing my lawn. Not because I'm necessarily worried about my ears all that much, although you probably should be. Okay, Technician A lifts a heavy load using leverage away from his body. Technician B lifts a load keeping it close to his body. Who's right about that? You know how to pick up something heavy without hurting yourself? You're going to hold it close to you. You pick it up with your legs. If you pick it up, you bend over and pick it up. level, pull back muscle. One time, I was doing a dragging an engine. It wasn't that heavy, but I just and I dragged it like that, and I pulled a muscle in my back. Boy, it took a month to get over that. It was bad. And, a lot of times you don't exercise that back muscle the way that you should to keep it strong. Excuse me, I'm taking this disc out of here. And when you don't exercise those back muscles, they get weak, and you don't know they're getting weak until they're already weak. You feel the same as you always felt. And then one day you do something you used to be able to do, and all of a sudden you get a great big surprise. Okay. Let me get this disc out of here. Okay, come here, Cameron. Write this. Take this thing right here and write International Skincare Techniques on that. No, on here. And take these discs, all 5 of them, down to, along with that one, down to Denise Saws. And tell her I sent you. All right. Okay, which number are we on, guys? We're almost through here. We're going to have to go in a minute. 17. Technician A says always to push heavy objects. Technician B says to pull heavy objects. Which one's right about that? You push them or pull them? Well, when you push them, you're a lot less likely to. What muscles are you using when you pull? You're stretching your back, aren't you? If you're pushing them, you're using your legs, and your legs are made for that. You know what I mean? So you got the biggest muscles on your body are your quads on your legs. So that's what you're going to use for that. Okay, proper working level is what? Waist height. Let me ask you this. This is funny. I'll see people that are used to working. I can tell they're used to working in the yard. They got a lift out here. They've got the lift up underneath the car, and they can raise the car up all the way up or stop it anywhere they want to go, and they raise it up 10 inches off the floor, and they sit down on the floor and they work on the brakes. Why do they do this? I mean, if I got it on a lift, I'm going to raise it up here, and I'm going to be, working at waist height. All right. Now then, let's see. Technician A says most non-running vehicles can be pushed into the shop by one person alone. Have you ever pushed a shop car by yourself? I have, but it's not easy, And if it's a big car, I ain't gonna try it. So, let's see. Technician B says use an electric pusher when moving non-running vehicle. What's an electric pusher? Anybody seen one? The answer to that question is B, by the way. An electric pusher. Imagine this. Imagine you got this thing. It's got this big box on it. It's got batteries in it. It's got wheels on it, and it's got strong motors down in there. It's got like 4 big 12-volt batteries in it. We had one of these at Ford place. And on the front, it's got this attachment that'll actually be made up with just about any bumper. All right. And so when you pull the trigger on this thing, it starts pushing, and it'll push. Heavy cars. So basically, when you get behind it, you pull the trigger, it goes to pushing. But I will tell you, these things cost about $4,000 or $5,000. They're expensive, but they'll push. And one man can get behind a motorhome with that doggone thing and pull the trigger and just walk behind it. It's just pushing that big old motorhome. Most people have not seen one of those. They don't. They cost so much that you're not going to see one unless you're at a really big shop that's got a lot of cash. And we had one over there. You got to keep those battery terminals clean, just like you do in your car, though. All right, let's keep going here. Let's see. Technician A says containers for dirty shop rags should be made of metal. And that is true. They really should be. Technician B says these containers should have a lid that stays closed. That keeps oxygen out, right? That's C. When pounding an aluminum part, it's best to pound with what? Like if you're having to move something that you don't want to destroy. What do you think? 21 is actually going to be C. You got it? All right. 22. What type of cleaning uses small living organisms to eat oil and grease? Did you know that they're, yeah, that's A there. Microbes. They used to use this stuff that they pour in the ditches down there when I was working in the oil business, and this oil would get spilled out on the water that sit in these ditches all the time, and they dump some of that stuff in them ditches, and the oil would go away because there's bacteria that'll eat oil. And our parts washer's got some of that stuff in there too, I believe. Technician A says a face shield when uses a face shield when using any type of pressure or chemical procedure. Yeah. Technician B uses protective gloves when working with solvents. Who's correct about that? That's C. Technician A says uses three-prong electrical cords when possible. Technician B uses double insulated electrical tools. Who's right about that? Both of those guys are right. Which substances can be used as abrasives for cleaning? Incidentally, if you've got a three-prong electrical cord, if you run into one out here that third prong is broken off of, let me know. We need to get that fixed. You don't want to use it without that, because if it's got that third prong, it's there for a reason, and circumstances can be just right to shock you. Hadn't seen that here, but that's what that third prong's there for a reason. Anybody ever seen one that somebody's cut the third one off of? The cord, somebody clips it off or it breaks off. They just leave it off. They keep using it because it'll work. But my dad had one. Had a drill that was old drill that was metal, and I was building the house that I built and finished back in 1986, and I was drilling a hole in the floor with his old drill, and he had clipped that thing off, and I'm gonna put it there in this moist dirt, and that thing was lighting me up. I mean, because it had a metal, it wasn't double insulated, it had actually a metal housing for the drill, and that thing, when you plug it in, you pull the trigger to shock you, and it can shock you bad enough to where it can take you out if you're not real careful. Which substances can be used as abrasives for cleaning? That's C, which is going to be steel shot or walnut shells, depending on what you're cleaning. Number 26, batteries should not be tipped more than how much of an angle?
90 degrees.
What do you think? That's going to be 45 degrees, actually. 90 degrees is 15 minutes on the clock, right? 45 degrees is half of that. So keep that up. Understand that. We're almost through here, guys. Now, how long did you guys, what was your amount of time that you were going to stay here every day? Did they tell you? Now, typically it runs from 7:30 to 8:40, Some of the guys didn't have to be at school until later, and they'd stay a little longer if they wanted to, Like I had some guys last time that didn't have to be at school until 10 o'clock for whatever reason. And, I'd let them stay and keep working. But basically, just find out from your school how long it is that you're supposed to be here, right? And abide by their rules, basically. You got to remember the fact that we're going to be keeping up with your attendance, and at the end of the week it's turned in, and your counselor is going to know whether you were here or not, so be aware of that. Okay, number 27, there's how many classes of fire extinguishers? There's four different classes of fire extinguishers. Which type of fire extinguisher may damage electronic components? That would be the dry chemical. Of course, that's what we use, but putting out the fire is more important than any electronic component, especially if it's about to burn the car down to the wheels. Technician A says an eye wash station should be located in the corner out of the way. Technician B says an eye wash station should be located in a central area. Which technician is correct? There's a sink over there. I've got a little eye wash bottle up there, but there's a sink over there that's got a sprayer on it. You know what I'm saying? Right over by the water fountain, there's a red cabinet, it's got a sink on it. So if you get something in your eye, you're going to take that sprayer, turn the water on, and squirt it in your eye. You can get it out of there. Whatever's in your eye that you want out of there, you can wash it out with that, so that you can use that. Technician A says eye contamination should be treated by flushing with water, and it's a good way to start. Technician B says professional help should be involved in the event of eye contamination. That depends. Technically you're supposed to say C. Both technicians are right. It depends on how bad your eye's contaminated. Now, if I splash some, like I knew this one guy that even though he was wearing safety glasses, there was some brake fluid, and he had safety glasses that were like this. Some brake fluid got in there, hit his hard enough from the angle to where it got in his eyes, in spite of the fact he was wearing safety glasses. But you can wash brake fluid out of your eyes, and typically, they'll be okay in a little while. I've got gasoline in my eyes before, and for a little while it feels like you're going to die. You ever had gasoline in your eyes? Yeah, you feel like you're going to die for a minute or two, and then after that it's okay. But basically, I'm not going to say we're going to rush everybody to the emergency room every time you get something in your eye. The smart thing to do is wear their glasses and stuff, or whatever, their face protection, or whatever is necessary. How many of you ever used a press, where you press something? You ever use a press? You got a hydraulic jack that's mounted on this thing, it's got in it, and it presses like that. I actually was using a press one time down in Texas when I was working down there in the late 70s, and I was pressing a big gear off. And I don't remember what happened, but the force of that press was like a 20-ton press, which is what we got out here. A piece of that metal popped off of that. There was somebody missed this. There were several of us working on it. There was a little steel ball that was inside of a hole that was supposed to stop that gear. And that little piece of steel ball sheared off, and when it came flying out of there, hit me in the shoulder, it went in my shoulder like a bullet, and it's still in there. It was a small piece, but it went in there. It made a little, you know, I felt it go in there, and it made a little bloody place. I know it didn't bounce off. I mean, it went in there, but of course it's not causing any trouble. The long and short of it is that hits you in the eye, it's over. You see where I'm going? All right. So when jump starting the vehicle,